Testing, testing, testing. All right, cool. We're recording. All right. Part 17856 specification 4AA 4880 welded steel cylinders. Type and size surface pressure. Dot 4AA 480 cylinders. Welded steel cylinder having a water capacity not over 1,000 pounds on water capacity. Surface pressure 480 psi gauge. Closure welded by a spinning process not permitted. Steel lighting, chemical composition of steel authorized by specification must be as shown as 1 Appendix A of this part. Identification material must be identified by any suitable method except for the plates and billets. For hot drum cylinders must be marked with a heat number to manufacturer. Cylinders must be manufactured using equipment such as process adequate to ensure that each cylinder produced conform with the requirements of the subpart. No defects permitted are likely to weaken the finished cylinder appreciably with a reasonable, smooth, and uniform surface of finish is required, except for the bottom of the welded cylinders over 18 inches long. Must be protected by foot rings. Minimum thickness of the head and bottoms may not be less than 90% of the required thickness. The sidewall seams must be made, as well as the circumferential seam must be welded. Brazes not authorized. Longitudinal seams are not permitted. Welding procedure operators must be qualified in accordance with the CGA C3. Welding not only with the welding of the neck rings, foot rings, bosses, pads, valve protection rings, and top-bottom cylinders is authorized, provided that such attachments are made of the weldable steel with carbon content which does not exceed 1/4% wall thickness. If the cylinder must conform with the following: for cylinders with outside diameter over 5 inches, the minimum wall thickness of 78 thousandths of an inch. Any of the case of the minimum wall thickness may be for the calculated wall strength. The minimum test pressure in paragraph 1I of the section may not be exceeded or lesser value either of the following: 1/2 of the minimum tensile strength of the material determined in paragraph J of the section, or 3,500 psi. Calculations must be made with the following formula: the ratio of tangential length of the outside diameter may not exceed 4.0, or cylinders with wall thickness less than 100 thousandths of an inch. Heat treatment. Each cylinder must be uniformly properly heat prior to testing is a suitable heat mixture excess of 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit authorized, except for liquid quench is not permitted. Heat treatment must be accomplished after all forming of the welding operation. Heat treatment is not required after welding weldable low carbon parts of the attachment similar material which have them previously welded top or bottom cylinder properly heated. Heat treated provided with the substantial welded but not produced at the temperature excess of 400 degrees Fahrenheit any part of the top of the bottom material. Openings in the cylinders. Opening in the cylinders must conform with the following: all openings must be in the head of the bases. Each of the opening in the cylinder except for the safety devices must be provided with a fitting above the pads securely attached to the cylinders by welding or by threads. If the threads are they must comply with the following: threads must be clean cut and without checks or cut to the gauge. Tape threads are to be length of not less than specified American standard taper pipe threads. Straight threads having at least a 6 gauge surface must have the tight fit with a calculated shear strength at least 10 times the test pressure of the cylinder gasket, adequate to prevent leakage is required. Closure to fitting the boss or the pad must be adequate to prevent leakage. Hydrostatic test. Each cylinder must successfully withstand when the hydrostatic test is followed. The test must be of the water jacket or the suitable method operated so that obtaining the accurate data with the present pressure gauge must be permitting reading accuracy of 1% of the expansion of the total gauge must be measured must permit the total expansion with an accuracy of the 1% of the 1/10 of the cubic centimeter. Pressure must be maintained for at least 30 seconds sufficiently to ensure complete expansion. Internal pressure applied for the heat treatment before the official test may not exceed 90% of the test pressure. If due to the test failure with the test operator with the test pressure cannot be maintained with the test must be repeated with the added pressure increased by 10% or 100 psi gauge, whichever the lower permanent. Volumetric expansion may exceed 10% of the total volumetric expansion for the test pressure. Cylinder must be tested as follows: at least one cylinder selected at random, and each of the 200 or less must be tested or described in paragraph 1, I1, I2, I3 of the section. At least 2 times the surface pressure is selected. If the cylinders fail, then 2 additional specimens must be selected with a random through and from same lot subject of the prescribed test. Either the fish fail to the test of each of the cylinder, the lots must be so tested, and each cylinder is not tested as prescribed in paragraph I4.1 of the section would examine under the pressure at least 2 times the surface pressure. If the must show no defect, the cylinder showing the defect may be rejected unless there is may be qualified under paragraph M of the section. Physical tests must be conducted to determine the yield of the strength of the tensile strength, elongation, reduction in area of the material. The solve of the test is required with the 2 specimens cut with the 1 cut cylinder. Pass the hydrostatic test in part through the heat treated is required with the random of the 1 out of each of the 200 or less. Specimens must conform with the following: gauge length of 8 inches with it's not over 1.5 inches, gauge length of 2 inches with not over 1.5 inches, gauge length with it 24 times the thickness of the wood with not over 6 times the thickness of the outer edge of the cylinder wall is not over 3/16 of an inch. Specimen exclusive. Grip ends may not be flattened, but the grip ends may be flattened to which 1 inch of the end, each end of the fully reduced section. Size of the cylinder does not permit secure straightening of specimens. Specimens may be taken in location direction and may be straightened and flattened or cooled by pressure. Only but not by the below specimens are taken with the prepared with the respect of the report must show with the connection with the record of physical test of detailed information regarding such specimens. Heat of the specimen any of the purpose is not authorized. Yield strength of intention must be strength that corresponding with the permanent strength with a 0.2%. Gauge length of the following condition. Yield strength must be determined by either of the offset method, extension under load method is prescribed ASTM E8. Use extension under load method. The load total strain of the extension under the loader. Corresponding strength at which 0.2% of the permanent strain occurred was determined with sufficient accuracy with the calculating elastic extension with the gauge length with appropriate load with adding the 0.2% of the gauge length. Elastic extension with the calculation must be based on elastic modules of 30 million. In the event of the controversy, the entire stress strain diagram must be plotted and the yield strength determined from 0.2% offset. For the purpose of the strain measurement, the initial strain reference must be set with the specimen with the 1200 psi and strain indicator reading being set at a calculated corresponding strain. Crosshead speed of the testing machine may not exceed 1/8 of an inch per minute during yielded strength determination elongation. Physical test specimen must show with at least 40% of the elongation, 2-inch gauge length with at least 20% gauge elongation. Other cases, except those elongation percentages may be reduced numerically 2x2 specimens, one in the other case of the 7,500 psi and increment tensile strength of above 50,000 psi, the maximum of 4 such increments. Test of welds. Welds must be tested for the tensile test specimen must be up from one cylinder of each of the lot of 200 or less. Or a welded test plate. With the welded test plate must be one of the heats of the lot of 200 or less, which of the represent the same condition, approximately same thickness cylinder wall, except that if that it may not be lesser of the wall thickness, that then may require quarter size of Sharpie and impact specimen of the weld. It must be made in the same procedure subject to the same heat treatment of the major weld of the cylinder. Specimens must be taken across the major seam and must be prepared and tested in accordance with and must meet the requirements of CGA pamphlet C3. Should the specimen fail to meet the requirements, specimens may be taken for the 2 additional cylinders. Welding test plate from the same lot tested in either later specimen that failed to meet the requirements for the entire lot represented must be rejected. Bend test. Ben says specimen must be cut with the cylinder weld the test plate will use it under the tensile test of the specified paragraph 1 and 1 of the section. Specimens must be taken across the major seam and must be prepared with the test in accordance with the and must meet with the requirements of the CGA pamphlet C3. Alternative guided bend test. If the test may be used, it must be required for the CGA pamphlet C3. Specimens must be bent into the elongation hour safe for the adjacent roof of the weld between the lightly described gauge lines A and B, and at least 20% of the percentage may be reduced and still have the tensile strength of at least 50%, 50,000 psi provided with the paragraph K of the section. Rejected cylinders. Reheated treatment of the rejected cylinders authorized. Subsequent thereto, the cylinders must also prescribe tests to be acceptable. Repair welded seams when the welding is authorized. Parkings must be stamped plainly and permanently in one of the following locations on the cylinder: one shoulder, top head at 80,000% inch thick. Neck and valve bosses, valve protection of the sleeve over the cylinder part permanent with attached and top end of the cylinder. On plate attached to the top of the cylinder, the permanent part of the air over the sufficient space must be left on the plate to provide the same thick at least 6. Retest date of the plate must be at least 1/16 of an inch thick. Must be attached with the welding and brazing at a temperature of at least 1100 degrees Fahrenheit throughout all the edges of the plate. Variation location marking authorized only when necessity by lack of space. 17857 specification 4L welded insulated cylinders. Type inside with the surface pressure with the determined design surface temperature for the dot 4L cylinders. Fusion weld with the insulated cylinder with the water capacity now not over 1,000 pounds per water capacity and surface pressure at least 40 but not greater than 5,500 psi gauge for conforming with the following requirements. Liquefied hydrogen surface cylinders may be designed to stand with the on end of the axis cylindrical portion vertical with the design surface temperature of the coldest temperature for which the cylinders are suitable. Required design certification the temperatures for each of the cryogenic liquid as follows, and it shows argon, helium, hydrogen, neon, nitrogen, oxygen, and their design surface temperatures. Material used with the construction specification must conform to the following intercontinental vessel cylinders designation eliminating chemical composition. Steel authorized by specification must be shown within table 1 of the paragraph O of the section. Outer jacket of steel and aluminum must be used in subject requirements paragraph O2 of the section. Identification material must be identified by any suitable method. Manufacturer cylinders must be manufactured with the equipment and process adequate to ensure that each of the cylinder produced to conform to the requirements of the subparts of the following requirements. No effect is permitted with the likely to weaken the finished cylinder with appreciably with a reasonable smooth and uniform surface finish for the required with the shelly portion must be reasonably true cylinder. The heads of it must be seamless for the concave side with the pressure with a hemical sphere ellipsoid shape and major diameter no more than twice of the minor diameter. Minimum thickness of the heads may not be less than 90% of the required thickness of the sidewall. Heads must be reasonable, true with the shape, but they have no abrupt shape and changes. The skirts must be reasonable and true around the surface of the cylinder must be insulated with the insulating material must be fire resistant. Insulating non-evacuated jackets must be covered with a steel jacket not less than 60,000 of an inch thick and an aluminum jacket not less than 70,000 of an inch thick. So constructed the moisture cannot come into contact with the insulating material if the vacuum is maintained by the insulation space. Evacuated jacket must be designed with minimum collapsing pressure. 30 psi gauge differential welder made of steel and aluminum. The construction must be such that the total heat transfer for the atmosphere at the ambient temperature of the two contents of the cylinder will not exceed 5 to 10,000 of an inch BTU per hour Fahrenheit degree differential in temperature per pound water capacity of the cylinder. For hydrogen, cryogenic liquid served with the total heat transfer with a temperature under differential of 520 degrees Fahrenheit may not exceed the required vent of 300 SCFs of hydrogen gas per hour. The cylinder having a design surface temperature colder than minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit. Calculation maximum weight of the contents must be made. The weight must be marked on the cylinder is prescribed in 178.35. Welding procedures and operating must be qualified in accordance with the CGA pamphlet C3. In addition to the impact test welding performed in accordance with the paragraph L of this section, as part of the qualification of each welding procedure operator. Welding of the cylinder must be as follows. All seams and cylinders must be fusion welded. The means must be provided with accomplishing complete penetration of the joint. Only butt and juggle butt joints of the cylinder seams are authorized. All joints in the cylinders must have reasonable true alignment. All attachments of the sidewall head of the cylinders must be made by fusion welded. Must be made be of welded material comply with the impact requirements of paragraph L of the section. For welding of the cylinder procedure operator by qualified accordance with the section CG pamphlet C3 of the applied addition with the impact test weld must be performed in accordance with paragraph L of the section as part of the qualification of each welding procedure.
I want you to find a stop point and come out and eat dinner.
Alright.
What you want? Sandwich, mashed potatoes, chili.
Just a sandwich. One sandwich.
Like a chicken breast sandwich?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Raising,
Bread?
yeah. Raising, soldering, threading are permitted only with the joints not directly with the cylinder, but the threads must comply with the requirements of paragraph H of the section. Wall thickness, minimum wall thickness of the cylinder must be set for the calculated wall strip. The minimum required test pressure may be not exceed the less value of the following 45,000 psi. 1/2 minimum tensile strength of the cuff of the welded seam diameter. Paragraph L of the section. 1/2 of the minimum tensile strength of the base material is determined required in paragraph J of the section. The yield strength of the base metal is determined as required in paragraph L of the section. Further, provided wall strip cylinder with having longitudinal seams may exceed 85% of the above value, whichever is applied. The calculation must be made with the following formula. And then heat treatment, but the heat treatment is not permitted. Opening cylinder, the opening in the cylinders must conform with the following openings in the permitted of the head. That must be circular, may exceed 3 inches of the diameter, 1/3 of the cylinder diameter. Whenever there's left, each of the opening in the cylinder must be provided with the fitting of the boss and pad with each either integral or securely attached to the cylinder body with a fusion weld. Attachments to the fitting of the boss or pad may be made by welding and brazing. Mechanical attachment or threading. Threading must comply with the following. Threads must be clean cut, even without checks and cut with the gauge. Taper threads to be length not less than specified with the MPT. Straight threads must have at least 4 gauge thread with a tight fit with a calculated shear strength of at least 10 times the test pressure for the cylinder gasket, and which prevents leakage in the air hazardous materials. Required pressure pressure test. Each of the cylinder before insulating jacket must be examined under the pressure of at least 2 times the surface pressure maintained for at least 30 seconds without evidence leakage valve of distortion or other defect with the pressure gauge must be permitted the reading of the accuracy of 1%. Physical test. The physical test must be conducted with the determined yield of strength, the tensile strength with an elongation of the valve of the test required with the 2 specimens selected with the material. Each for the heat, same conditions. So, the completed cylinder specimens must conform with the following: a gauge length of the 8 inch with the width not over 1.5 inch, for the gauge length of the 2 inch width not over 1.5 inch, of the gauge length of the 24 times the thickness of the width not over 6 down, the thickness of the outer edge of the cylinder wall is not over 1/16 of the main specimen. Exclusive of the grip ends may not be flat, with the grip ends may be flat within 1 inch of the end of the reduced section. One side of the cylinder does not permit skewing straight with the specimen. The specimen may be taken within any location direction, may be straight within flat with cold by the pressure only, not by blows. When specimens are taken to prepare with the inspector reports must show with the connection record of the physical test of the detailed information regarding surface of the specimen. Heating of the specimen with any of the purpose of the not authorized yield strength with the tension must be set corresponding to the permanent strength of 2/10% of the gauge length with the following condition. Yield strength must be determined by either the offset method or the extension underload method is prescribed in ASTM EE38, and using the extension under the load method. The total strength of the corresponding with the 2/10% of the permanent strength of the curve may be determined with sufficient accuracy with the calculation elastic expansion of the gauge length under an appropriate load with the adding of the 2/10% of the gauge length. Elastic extension of the calculation must be made with the elastic module material with the U in the event of the controversy. Entire stress strain diagram must be applied with the yield strength determined at 2/10% offset. For the purpose of the strain measurement with the initial stressing, strain reference must be set with a specimen under 12,000 psi. With the strain indicator reading may be set to be calculated corresponding strain. For crosshead specimen with the testing machine may not exceed 1/8 of an inch per minute during the yield strength test and determination. An acceptable result of the physical test physical property must be met with the limited specified in paragraphs 01 of the table 1 of the section particular steel. In a annealed condition, with the specimen must show with at least 20% of the elongation 2-inch gauge length, with the except for the percent of the reduction reduced numerically by 2 for each of the 7,500 psi increment of tensile strength above the 100,000 psi maximum, with set 5 such incremental yield strength of tensile strength must meet with the requirements of paragraph 01 of the table 1 is this section. Test weld. The weld must be as follows. The tensile strength of the specimen must be 1 cut from one cylinder, each of out with a 2 or less welded tested plate. With the weld tested plate must be 1 of the heat with the heat in the lot of 200 or less, which represent the same condition, approximately the same thickness as the cylinder wall, except that may not require not be lesser thickness than the required for the quarter size sharp to the impact specimen. The weld must be made with the specimen same procedure with the subject with the same heat treatment and with the major weld of the cylinder specimen must be taken across the major seam that must be prepared in accordance with the must be requirements of the CGA pamphlet C3. Should be the specimen fail to meet with the requirements of the specimen must be taken with the 2 additional cylinders while the test and play with the same lot with the test of either with a later specimen fail to meet the requirements for the entire lot represented, but that must be rejected. Alright, the guide bind bend play for the root bend with the test specimen must be cut from the cylinder with the welded tested with the U with the tensile specified. Paragraph L1 with the section from any with the other seam with the equivalent weld with the test plate with the seam with the welded proceed with the different from the U of the major seam with the specimen must be taken across the particular seam with being tested with must be prepared with the test in corner with the must be with the requirements of CGA pamphlet C3. Alternate guiding best and heads of the test must be made used and must be specimen with the CG pamphlet. Okay. CG pamphlet C3 specimen must be bent until the elongation hours for the adjacent of the root of the weld between lightly scribed gauge with the line A to B with at least 2% of the except for that this percentage may reduce the seal having the tensile strength with the excess of the 100,000 psi gauge provided with the paragraph C of the section impact test. One set of the 3 impact testaments or each of the tests must be prepared to test to determine the impact property of the deposit of the welded metal. As part of the qualification welding procedure, as part of the qualification of operators for each of the welding heat or welding rotor wire used. For each 1,000 feet of welded made with the seam heat welding rod. All impact test specimens must be with the sharpie type of the keyhole mill with the U-notch must conform in all the quantity ASTM E23. Each side of the impact must be taken across with the weld having not lodged located welded mill with the certain materials thick of the 2.5 millimeters thick of the impact tensile specimen must be covered up with the cylinder welded test plate with the U with the tensile and bending test specimen with the dimension along with the extension axis of the notch must be reduced with the largest possible 10 millimeters, 7.5 millimeter, 5 millimeter, 2.5 millimeters, depending on cylinder thickness. When the material with the cylinder welded with the test plate with is not sufficient thickness for the prepared 2.5 millimeter impact testing specimen, 2.5 specimens must be prepared. For welded test plate with a made of 1/8 of the thick material with a meeting of the requirements specified in the paragraph 01 of the table, section having the carbon analysis of 5 hundredths of the minimum, not necessarily for 1 heat. The U of the lot system test procedure must be welded the same welding procedure used in particular cylinder or seam qualification. Qualified must be subject to the same heat treatment. The impact test specimen that must be cooled. The design serve the temperature for the aperture for the testing. The specimen will conform to the requirements of the ASTM E23 with the testing piece of this weld with the handle of the tongue, but it must be cooled for the length of the time. Serve history of the reach for serve the temperature of the cooling. Device must be maintained with a range of the -3 degrees Fahrenheit. The specimen must quickly transfer the cooling device to amble the testing machine broken, which for the time left not more than 6 seconds. The impacts property for each of the impact specimens may not be left in the values of the following. And this shows the specimen and their minimum impact required average. Each for the set 3 specimen, minimum one value and permitted for only one of set 3. 7 of the valve, average valve of 3 specimen equal to exceed the minimum valve permitted with a single specimen valve. The more the one specimen is below the required average of the valve, the value of the average value within the value of the one of the specimens below the minimum value permitted with a single specimen. Every retest of 3 additional specimens must be made with the valve. Each of the retest specimens must be equal to exceed the required average value. Erratic result is caused by the defective specimen. There is uncertainty with the test which you retest the authorized. Radiographic examination. Cylinders must be subject to the radiographic examination as follows. The techniques acceptable. Radiographic inspection must conform to the standard set with the CGA panel of C3. One finished longitudinal seam must be selected with a random each of the lot with the 100 less successfully produce radiograph throughout the entire length of the showed the radiographic examination failed to meet the requirements of paragraph M1 of the section. 2 additional seams of the same lot must be examined. Either of these fail to meet the requirements of M1 of the section only with the passing over the acceptable. Rejected cylinders. Reheat the treatment of this reheated rejected cylinder with the authorized subsequent air to must pass all the prescribed tests of the acceptable welds must be repaired with a suitable weather diffusing welding. Authorized material for the construction. The authorized material for the construction as follows: inner containment of the cylinder, electronic fairness with all uniform quality must be. The chemical analysis must be conformed with the ASTM A240A or 240M. The 304 stainless steel with the chemical analysis must conform with the ASTM A240. The type of the 304 stainless steel with the heat of the steel made with the table 1, table 2 with the paragraph 01 acceptable, even through the check of the chemical analysis. It's slightly only out with the specified range if the satisfactory all the respects provided with the tolerance shown with the table 3 with the paragraph 01 of the not exceed with the following chemical analysis of the physical properties that are authorized. And show table 1 authorized materials, table 2 physical properties, table 3 check for an analyst tolerances, and outer check of the non-flammable cryogenic liquid cylinders. For the use of transportation non-flammable cryogenic liquids have the outer jacket made with steel and aluminum. Flammable cryogenic liquids intended for the use of the transportation flammable cryogenic liquids may have the outer jacket made with steel. Markings must be stand plain with the permanently on the shoulder, the top of the head with the jacket on permanently attached plate with the head of particular ring. The letters ST valve with the design surface temperature must be marked on one cylinder and have the design surface temperature of the cold than 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Only the location just below the dot mark. Maximum of the contents of the inches in pounds must be marked on cylinder that have the design surface temperature of the cold within -320 degrees Fahrenheit. Location to be nearly symbol. Special orientation instruction must be marked with the cylinder with the example of this end over if the cylinder is used with an orientation other than vertical with the openings at the top of the cylinder. If the jacket of the cylinder is constructed with aluminum layers of the AL must be marked on the surface of the pressure marking .AL 150 AL. Except for the serial number of the jacket, the material designation either the marking prescribed in paragraph B must be duplicated on each of the cylinder by either suitable means. Inspector's report additional with the information required in 178.35. The inspector reports must be contain with the information only the jacket material, the insulation type, the design, surface temperature, and the impact test result with a lot basis. All right, I'm going to stop there and come back. I gotta eat.